Well, it has been a long road and it will be a long road back to being an electable opposition and ultimately an elected government again. The coalition is in the fight of its life and Angus Taylor acknowledged that point today.
If an election was held today, our party may not exist by the end of it. We're in this position because we didn't stay true to our core values, because we stopped listening to Australians, because we were attracted to the politics of convenience rather than focusing on the politics of conviction. This ends today. It's on us to regain that trust and earn it, but the choice is simple for the Liberal Party: change or die, and I choose change.
Now, I must admit I've had misgivings about the idea of Taylor being leader, just as I had misgivings about Sussan Ley being leader. I suppose on that count I was right. I think he lost a lot of bark during the federal election campaign when, as Shadow Treasurer, he became the face of higher taxes. The coalition said they wouldn't pass on Labor's tax cut, measly as it might have been, and it was the greatest free kick of all time. It's been put to me privately by some in the party that it was actually the ultimate control of Peter Dutton's team that led to that decision, and it wasn't all Taylor's fault. But it doesn't really matter. He was the Shadow Treasurer, he was the economic frontman, and he was selling higher taxes to the voting public. We've seen it in the advertising that the Labor Party rolled out today. They're already harnessing it. I mean, it was maybe some of the dumbest political strategy and campaigning that I have ever seen. But I thought he hit the right notes today. He said all the right things. He's setting up clear points of difference and exactly the sort of issues that the Liberal Party needs to tackle if it is to survive. Issue 1, home ownership.
All Australians, especially young Australians, deserve the stability and the opportunity to own a home. We'll re-establish home ownership as the centrepiece of the Australian dream.
Now, I preface all of this by saying we obviously don't know what sort of policies will follow, but the fact he puts this first on his list is integral to a modern Liberal Party. If the Liberal Party wants to survive, it needs to attract younger voters. And younger voters are drifting further and further to the left because, in large part, they don't have a stake in this country. They don't own anything. They don't have a patch of their own patch of dirt. They don't have children. And property for young people today, we know, costs far more as a proportion of income than it did for their parents and grandparents. And if you can't afford a house, why would you have kids? And if you don't own a patch of this country and you don't have an investment in the future of this country through children, then why would you give a toss about conserving anything? Just give it to me now. I'll take what I can get. So the survival of conservatism and right of centre thinking is hugely reliant on home ownership. It has to be number 1. Issue 2, immigration and Australian values.
Record immigration has added pressures to infrastructure, to services, to housing in this country. Our borders have been open to people who hate our way of life. People who don't want to embrace Australia and who want Australia to change for them. We'll stand for an immigration policy that puts the interests of Australians first and puts Australian values at the centre of that policy. If someone doesn't subscribe to our core beliefs, the door must be shut. If someone wants to import the hatred and violence of another place to Australia, the door must be shut.
Is exactly how the Liberals need to talk about migration. If you don't love it, leave. Even better, if you don't love it, we don't let you in. The door must be shut, as Taylor says. Poll after poll shows that the majority of Australians, many of them migrants themselves, it must be said, think the rate of immigration is too high. And immigration is intrinsically linked to the cost of living. It affects housing, it affects schools, it affects hospitals, roads, jobs, everything. Too much demand, not enough supply, cost of living goes up. It's just a dead easy economic argument. And it should be an easy cultural argument too, particularly after the Bondi massacre. And the fact that Taylor talked about immigration today, not just in economic terms, but in cultural terms as he did there, you know, we love this country, defend Australian values, that is very much welcome. He's signalling that he is willing to get into the trenches of the culture wars, and they are fights that we must have. We must have the courage to have those fights. Just look at One Nation's polling if you want to see what's happening with migration. I mean, it's been their number one policy for a long time, and they are soaring in the polls. Issue 3, taxes and the economy.
As Liberals, we stand for lower inflation, lower interest rates and lower taxes. The Liberal Party must always be the party of lower taxes. We will ferociously fight Labor's bad taxes. Taxes on homes, taxes on superannuation, taxes on our children's future. We know that government must live within its means, so Australians have the means to live.
Good line. It's also good to see Mr Higher Taxes become Mr Lower Taxes. This is going to be one of the biggest hurdles he has to get over. I mean, how do you trust a man who says he'll bring you lower taxes when, in fact, at the last election he denied you a tax cut? But that is his cross to bear. And he mentions their taxes on our children's future. Let's hope that means they start talking about bracket creep, which disproportionately hurts workers in their 20s and 30s who are working their way up the career ladder and getting pay rises. Now, I saw someone online the other day point out that in 2010, the top tax bracket kicked in at $180,000 and today it kicks in at $190,000. That's, of course, Labor fiddled with the stage 3 tax cuts. It could have been higher than that. But inflation in that time has been 49%. Which means that, like for like, if the tax brackets were indexed and went up with inflation, that top tax bracket should kick in at $268,000 to $190,000. This is a good policy to throw to young people. We will give you more of your money back by indexing the rate of tax. Issue 4, common sense, not net zero.
Australia needs an energy policy that is based on common sense, not Labor's net zero ideology. We will get rid of Labor's bad carbon taxes on the family vehicle, on manufacturing and food in this country, and of course on electricity.
An important part of the Liberal Party finding a road back to government is winning back suburban voters. I talked last week about how the polling at the moment, this is from Redbridge, that was in the AFR last week, it's showing that One Nation is surging particularly in the outer suburbs, and it's surging also with working class voters. People in the suburbs aren't jumping up and down about climate change, and nor are they, it should be said, jumping up and down about scrapping net zero. I don't think they go home at night, sit around the dinner table and say, net zero, got to do something about it. But they do care about blue-collar jobs, and that affects things like manufacturing, the power, of course, that it provides, and they do care about their power bills. I mean, they're just trying to get by. The number one issue is the cost of living. And so the Liberals have to prosecute the sensible case for why net zero is increasing power bills and how they can actually bring them down. How that if you bring power bills down, perhaps we could have a more flourishing manufacturing industry in this country that provides jobs to voters in the outer suburbs. Issue 5, speaking of jobs, families.
We'll reduce financial pressures for families, expand childcare choice and give children the best start in life, not force every family into a universal system.
As I said earlier, Australians having families is integral to the survival of conservatism, and I love that he says we need to expand childcare choice. We need to trust families to make the decisions that are right for them, and I hope this means he is opening the door to reforming childcare subsidies so that money could be spent in the ways families deem best, rather than mandating that children be separated from their parents and that the money be given to some corporation that keeps jacking up the fees. And issue 6, defence.
And we'll properly fund our defence force to deter threats and aggression in these uncertain times. Our nation must be defended because our history, our culture, our values are worth celebrating and defending.
Again, he links it to history and culture, that we need a strong defence force because we are a country worth defending with a culture worth celebration and preservation. So in all, I think it was a good start. He's hitting the right notes. Now Mr Taylor has to back this up with policy, and he has to prove that he can stick to the plan. As the splash on The Australian said today, will good opposition start today? Do or die? Well, Angus Taylor has to do. Otherwise, the Liberal Party is at risk of death. And the risk for him is that if he fails, the history books will show not that the Liberal Party died on Sussan Ley's watch, but that it died on Angus Taylor's watch. That is a monumental responsibility to bear. Now we'll see if he's up to the job.